Welcome to EPG Pathshala. My name is Dr. Neeraj Agarwal and I am Assistant Professor in University Institute of Hotel and Tourism Management, Punjab University, Chandigarh. I am presenting lecture on module titled Beer under the paper titled Food and Beverage Service Operations and Management. After completing this module, the learners would be able to understand meaning of beer, ingredients and manufacturing process of beer, types of beer, brand names of beer, serving procedure of beer. Now, I will discuss the introduction to beer. Beer is derived from the word beer, an Anglo-Saxon word which means barley. It is one of the world's most ancient and satisfied drinks which has played an important role in many of the major cultures of the past. Brewing is the process by which beer is made. Many believe that the Middle East and Egypt were the birthplace of beer and developed brewing to a fine art. However, at the same time, the Africans were making their own intoxicating drink by brewing method using millet, and Chinese were brewing beer using more advanced technique using millet and rice as a prime ingredient. In Latin America, the Aztecs in Mexico boosted their own beer gods, and Brazilian Indian produced dark, smoky, tasty brews from manioc roots and grains roasted over hardwood fire. Some historic event argues that in very early times the crop was cultivated not for food but to brew beer. By 6000 BC, brewing was well established in Babylon. The Egyptians, Greeks and Romans all produced beers of acceptable quality. The Normans are credited with bringing their brewing skills to England. One belief that many of these very early brewers shared was that the beer they brewed was a gift from the gods. Beer in this modern world is one of the widely consumed beverages. Now, we are going to discuss the ingredients for beer making. Ingredients used in beer making which provides distinct flavor to the beer are described as follow. The first one is grain. The best cereal to produce beer is barley as it contains the natural sugar required for fermentation. Barley in its malted form gives an unrivaled taste to beer. Barley is very rich in starch, around 60 to 65%, and also in the enzyme called as diastase. It is a diastase which converts the starch into sugar, which is very important for fermentation. Other grains such as wheat, rice and maize is also being used for brewing beer, but mostly they are used in conjunction with barley to add some balance. Second ingredient is sugar. Graded or refined sugars are added for fermentation and to add sweetness. It acts as a catalyst for the fermentation process. Heated sugar or caramels are sometimes used instead of colored malts to darken beers. The third important ingredient is yeast. It is single-cell living microorganism essential to induce fermentation and very crucial for fermentation. It occurs everywhere, but only a few types are suitable for fermentation in beer. During fermentation process, the yeast converts the sugar into alcohol and releases carbon dioxide. Any one of the two type of brewer's yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae and Saccharomyces calbaginae or a Saccharomyces euvarum is used in beer production. Saccharomyces calbaginae is used in making bottom fermented beer like lager, while Saccharomyces cerevisiae is used in making top fermented beer such as ales and stouts. The fourth ingredient is finning. These are brightening agents added to clarify the beer. Beer gets hazy and cloudiness due to yeast and proteins. Therefore, to clarify the beer, finning agents are added. Finnings clear and brightens the beer. The finning agents attract all the sediments to the bottom of the cask, making beer clear and bright. Examples are isinglass, which is obtained from air bladders of various fish, especially sturgeon fish. Iris moss, it is not only a moss but a sweetened or a synthetic finning agent. The fifth is hops, female cone of flower. Hop plants are climbing plants that is a member of the hemp family, distantly related to both cannabis and the nettle. Botanical name of hop is Humulus lupulus. A single hop plant carries male or female flowers. However, female flower is used for brewing. The female cone is made up of a number of petals like structures called bracts. As the cone ripens, the bases of these bracts bear glands filled with a yellow resinous, oily substance known as lupulin. It is this lupulin that contains alpha acids which gives a characteristic bitterness and distinct flavor to beer. Hops can be used in various forms while brewing beer, such as in the form of entire cone, slightly crushed, powdered form, or hop extracts. Hops are added in beer as a preservative and aiding longevity to prevent the beer from going sour, to add a characteristic bitter flavor and aroma, to aid in digestion. Fuggle, Saz, Crystal Goldings, Brimming, Cross, Spalter, Admiral, Chinook, Orient to name a few are some of the types of hops used by brewers to produce beer. Another ingredient used is water. Beer is made up mainly of water. It is a prime ingredient for making beer. The composition of water can influence the brewing process and ultimately result in a softer, harder or sweeter beer. Water contains 6 main minerals: bicarbonate, sodium, chloride, calcium, magnesium and sulfate. The proportion of these minerals in the water greatly affect the flavor and sometimes color of the finished product. Brewers have even given water their own name, liquor. Hard water is ideal for lager and soft water more suitable for heavier beers. Approximately 6 liters of water is required to produce 1 liter of beer. Another is adjuncts. Some beers add substance to the mash other than malt called adjuncts. These adjuncts are added to the grist when the malt is cracked in the mill. Adjuncts can be used to provide a cheaper substitute for part of malt or when there is a short supply of malt. Sometimes, however, the extra ingredients can simply be added to enhance the flavor of beer, to reduce cost or to improve color. Some of the common adjuncts are sugar. It is the common adjunct as it ferments easily and quickly to produce more alcohol and makes beer lighter. Caramel. It is used instead of dark malt to give color to beer. Flaked maize. It is used to make dry, light colored beer. Rice. Used as an alternative to the malt. Roasted barley. Unmalted roasted malt is sometimes used to darken or blacken the beer along with a harsh and dry flavor. Other ingredients are also added while brewing beer like honey, chili, ginger, herbs and fruit peels as a flavor enhancers. Now, I will discuss the beer manufacturing process. Beer manufacturing, also known as brewing process, have several steps which are described below. The first step is malting. Barley, when steeped or soaked in water, is known as malt. To produce good malt, the barley must be of good quality and low in nitrogen, as nitrogen may affect the fermentation. Malting has 3 distinct steps. The first step is steeping. After screening the barley to remove any extraneous matter, it is put into a large tank and steeped in a water to a moisture content of about 45%. This is simply an accelerated version of the absorption of water which would normally occur over several weeks in the soil. The grain absorbs the water and oxygen which leads to germination. The second is germination. This is the commencement of growth when the food reserves in the grain, namely starch and protein, are broken down into sugar and amino acids. The moist grain is spread onto a malting floor which is air conditioned to assist germination. Each grain sprouts tiny rootlets, and at the same time the enzymes begins to convert the starch into sugar. The third is kilning. After about 5 days, when germination has reached the desired stage, further development is stopped by kilning. The grain is gently dried by hot air and moisture is removed. Depending upon the intensity and duration of kilning, different colored malts are produced, such as pale malt, lager malt, crystal malt, and chocolate or black malt. The second major step is milling. Malted barley is lightly crushed by passing through a mill, produces or fine black powder called grist. At this stage, other cereals can be introduced, such as wheat, unmalted barley, rice, and flaked maize to give more subtle characteristics of flavor and color to the finished brew. The third step is mashing. The grist is transferred to a very large vessel known as mash tun, where it is mashed with hot water, keeping the temperature at 65 degrees centigrade, allowing the enzymes formed during malting to convert the starch into fermentable sugar that will determine the alcohol content of the beer. The resulting sweet brown liquid is known as wort. Some brewers also use the decoction method, in which the brewers has not one but 2 or 3 mash tuns. Here the mash is heated at 250 degrees centigrade, but instead of everything being heated in a single mash tun, a third of the mash is transferred to another mash tun where it is brought to the boil. The boiling mash is then added back to the remaining mash, and in this way the higher temperature of around 65 degrees centigrade is reached. This process is repeated to achieve a temperature of 75 degrees centigrade. The fourth step is lautering. In this process, the mash is transferred to a straining vessel, which is usually cylindrical with a slotted false bottom to 5 centimeters above the true bottom. The liquid extract wort drains through the false bottom and is run off to the brew kettle. Water is passed through the grains to wash out as much of the extract as possible. The spent grains are removed and sold as kettle feed. Then, boiling or brewing, the wort is now taken to a copper, a sort of massive kettle, usually made of stainless steel, where hops and sugar are added and boiled for an hour and a half. Boiling enables the wort to be brought to the desired density and to kill the enzymes and bacteria that is still present, thereby sterilizing the brew. Hops are added at various phases of boiling process. Hops that are added for their aromatic qualities will often be added only a few minutes before the end of the boiling process, so that not too much aroma is lost. Hops used for bitterness are added at the start of the boiling process. Next step is whirlpooling. As a result of addition of the hops and the precipitation of proteins during the brewing process, the wort is filtered using a whirlpool separator. With this device, the brewer circulates the wort at high speed in the vessel, causing the loose particles to be piled up in the center. At the same time, the clear liquid is drained away on the outside of the vessel. The remaining hops are sold as a fertilizer. Another step is cooling. After boiling process, hops is removed and wort is pumped through a paraflow, that is heat exchanger, where it is cooled to a temperature of 15 degrees centigrade and is now ready for fermentation. After this, we have a fermentation process. During fermentation process, the yeast is added, which absorbs the nutrients and feeds on the sugar, converting them into alcohol and release carbon dioxide. Two types of fermentation, top fermentation and bottom fermentation, is to be done depending on the style of beers. For top fermentation, the yeast Saccharomyces cerevisiae is added and the fermentation takes place either open or closed. The yeast floats on the wort and converts the sugar into alcohol and carbon dioxide. The temperature during this process vary from 15 to 25 degrees centigrade and the time required ranges from 3 to 7 days. Whereas in bottom fermentation, the yeast Saccharomyces calsberginalis or Saccharomyces euvarum is added and the yeast eventually sinks to the bottom. One of the main advantages of bottom fermentation is that it is less prone to infection and the process is more predictable. The fermentation proceeds very slowly for 2 weeks and requires a temperature between 5 to 10 degrees centigrade. After the fermentation process, the beer is known as green beer. After fermentation, we have maturing and conditioning. After fermentation, the liquid known as green beer is run into conditioning tanks where it is left for maturing. The length, nature and location differs from beer to beer. For top fermented beers, this settling period is short and for bottom fermented beers, it can last for many weeks. Conditioning builds up the carbon dioxide in the beer and it is this gas that will give the beer its head in the glass when poured. Addition of yeast and some fresh wort for fermentation of the more stubborn sugar is also done and known as crossing. Some traditional beers are racked directly into wooden or metal casks ready to go to the consumers without filtration or any processing. These beers are known as bottled conditioned beers. Finnings are also added to the cask to clear the beer in addition to yeast with some sugar to encourage further or secondary fermentation, which is known as priming. Dry hops may also be added to impart extra aroma. Cask conditioned beers or bottled conditioned beers continue to mature until they are served, develop complex fruity flavors. Then we have a filtration. After conditioning and maturing, beer develops cloudiness due to dead yeast, protein, cell and other. This unwanted sediments is known as lees is removed by filtration process. A sterile filtering system of fine sheet filters are used to filter the unwanted substances in beers. Then we have pasteurization. Pasteurization, named after Louis Pasteur, who discovered the process, involves briefly heating the beer so as to stop the microbiological activities in the beer. Pasteurization is used to prolong the beer's storage life. Beers that are bottle conditioned are not pasteurized. Pasteurization may be performed before bottling by heating the beer to 60 to 80 degree centigrade and at the same time passing through the tube known as flash pasteurization. Another method is to send the beer through a heated tunnel known as tunnel pasteurization after it has been bottled. Now, I will discuss the different types or styles of beer, top fermented and bottom fermented. A broad classification of beer types can be made based on the type of fermentation. Generally, beer can be classified on the basis of types of fermentation, that is, bottom fermentation or top fermentation and spontaneous fermentation. Difference between bottom fermented beer and top fermented beer. Types of yeast. Saccharomyces calsberginalis or Saccharomyces euvarum and Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Fermentation yeast sinks to the bottom of the wort, yeast floats on the wort. Temperature. Primary fermentation takes place at cool temperature from 5 degrees centigrade to 10 degrees centigrade. Primary fermentation takes place at warm temperature, that is from 15 degrees centigrade to 25 degrees centigrade. Holding last 2 weeks, lasts for 3 to 7 days. Secondary fermentation in the form of cruisening and in the form of priming service. There we have 4 to 6 degree and there we have 8 to 20 degrees centigrade. Composition. These beers are thick and they are dark beers. These beers are thinner and the other ones are clearer. They are infection susceptible to infections and they are less susceptible to infections. Top fermented beer. Ale is a generic term for the top fermented beers brewed in the British style. The color is usually amber, though not necessarily so, while the flavor is generally bitter to sweet but may also be sourish. Most ales are full-bodied and fruity. Porters. This ale gets its name from its popularity among porters in London and Dublin. It is brewed from charred malt and is highly aromatic and flavorsome. Stout, made from scotched, very dark malt and generously flavored with hops. Stout has a smoothie malty flavor and creamy consistency. Trappist. These are only 6 brands in the world that are allowed to call their Trappist. They all make top fermented beers that are close to the Belgian ales and barley wines. Alt beer from Germany is a top fermenting beer and undergoes a cold maturation of from 3 to 8 weeks. The color is usually fairly dark, bronze colored, though lighter version also occurs. Amber is a fairly modern name for an ale referring principally to the color. The Belgian special beers and American ales bear this designation. Barley wine, kind of an ale having heavy, fruity taste, consists of higher alcohol content, near about 10%, is closer to wine than beer. That is why known as barley wine rather than beer. It has a bronze to mahogany color. Kolsch is a top fermented beer from a German city of Cologne. Kolsch means clone. It is a straw beer, light and soft, but with a substantial carbon dioxide content. It may also be brewed with a small amount of wheat malt. Now, bottom fermented beers. Lager. This beer gets its name from the German word lagern, means to store, and was originally made in Central Europe. Is a bottom fermented beer. The beer is stored at a low temperatures for up to 6 months after fermentation in order to condition and mature before it is sold either in bottle or on a draught. The long storage period also helps the beer to withstand variation of temperature without cloudiness. Bock comes from the German village of Enbeck. Our bottom fermented beer have a somewhat higher alcohol content and are characterized by the malty sweetness. Pilsner, originally a beer from the Czech town of Plzeň. It is always a straw bottom fermented beer with a moderate hop bitterness and light maltiness. The alcohol percentage is 4.5 and 5.5 alcohol by volume. Pilsner is nowadays a neutral beer. Malt liquor, it is a strong lager often made with huge amount of sugar to produce a thin brew. Now, spontaneous fermentation. Lambic beer. Lambic beer from Belgium is a special style among beers. It is a spontaneous fermentation using wild airborne yeast beer. It is brewed with 30% wheat, is a sourish beer that undergoes a long maturation process in oak. It contains little alcohol and in it plain version has few adherents. It is usually sweetened, blended or prepared with fruits. Another is Gauge, where mature lambic and a young lambics are blended and bottled together. The mixture involves further to form a sweet sourish beer that is livelier than lambic, known as Gauge. Faro, it is simply a lambic to which sugar has been added so as to sweeten the sourish beer. Mixes of lambic with sweet top fermenting beers also occurs as faro. The other examples of beers are draught beers. Draught beer system uses a plastic chamber in the bottom of the can. The can is filled with beer containing dissolved gas and it is then sealed. When it is eventually opened, the pressure pushes to the beer down and then through a small holes in the chamber, which releases a very fine stream of bubbles. As we finish pouring, a pub style smooth creamy head will form. Ice beer, new concept in beer where the beer is made by cooling beer to below freezing point and then removing the ice crystals formed. Ice beer has a higher alcoholic content. Many ice beer were originally developed in Canada. Root beer. Root beer is not actually a beer but a soft drink originally flavored with sassafras root bark and is boiled but not fermented. It is very famous in America. Reason this wheat beer style has come from Bavaria. The white or wheat beers of Bavaria are made with 50 to 60% malted wheat. These pale, often cloudy brews become a popular summer refresher in Germany. Now, I will discuss a different glasswares to be used for consuming beer. Beers are served mostly in the following glasswares: Pilsner glass to serve Pilsner beer, beer goblets that has been used to serve lager beers, beer mugs or dimple glasses, pitchers, Vision beer glass to serve wheat beers. The beers are being served in a different measures, that is pint 330 ml, if bottle 650 ml. Beer strengths. The average strength of beer is 4% alcohol by volume. However, beer ranging from 4 to 11% alcohol by volume is also available along with low alcohol and alcohol-free beer. Super strength, that is 8 to 11% alcohol by volume. Premium strength, it contains 4 to 6% alcohol by volume. Standard strength contains 3 to 4% alcohol by volume, and the low alcohol is from 0.5 to 1.2% alcohol by volume. Alcohol free not more than 0.05% alcohol by volume. Now we are discussing the international beer brands. Foster is from Australia, Corona from Mexico, Tiger, Malaysia, Carlsberg, Denmark, Castle Lager, South Africa, Heineken, Netherlands, Amstel Light, Netherlands, Kalyani Black Label, India, Kingfisher, India, Budweiser, USA, Brahma, Brazil, Murphy, Ireland, Stella Artois, Belgium, and Guinness from Ireland. Now, I will discuss the beer serving procedure. Beverage orders to be served within 5 minutes of the guest order. The beer glass should be placed at the 4 o'clock position to the water glass. The glass should be free from chips, stains and watermarks. Handle the glass from the base using the forefinger and thumb only, leaving no fingerprints on the glass. Brand name of the beer we have to use and say sir or ma'am. The bottle opener should be clean, free from dust and rust. Stop pouring below a rim. The head should not exceed 1 centimeter. In case the beer is not being shared, place the bottles in front of the consumer's cover. And we should also pronounce enjoy your drink sir or a madam. Would you like to repeat your drink sir or madam? But now the procedure. The F&B associate, after taking the order from the guest, gives the quote to the bar, picks up the order and carries it to the station sideboard. The F&B associate to place the chilled beer glass on the table and then present the beer bottle to the host for approval. On getting the approval from the host, open the bottle and pour along the rim so as to avoid excessive head formation. Lift and tilt the glass to approximately 45-degree angle. Keep the bottle with remaining beer in the center of the table on a coaster. Wish the guest while leaving the table. The F&B associate should ask for a repeat order when the glass is 1/3 empty. Thank you and have a nice day.